Hi, everyone. We practiced pronouncing my name, so I was very proud. I'd like to introduce our speakers. Kristi Argyilan is SVP Media and Guest Engagement at Target, and Kelly Clark, the Global CEO of GroupM. So how many of you have shopped at Target in the last year? Raise your hand.
Yay!
You're making them very happy. Is it 3/4 of American adults?
Pretty much,
shop at
yes.
something like that?
Yes.
Online and offline?
Indeed.
So and your task is really to keep them coming, right?
Yep.
So,
we have to do.
Walk us through, because you guys have basically tried to take on the ambitious task of reinventing the client agency model. So walk us through how you've gone about doing that, and maybe you can start us off, Kristi.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Up until about 2.5 years ago, I was actually working media agency side. So had my own ambitions for how I really felt the industry could transform and the kinds of solutions that agencies could bring to clients. And once I found myself at Target and had an opportunity to really lead transformation of the area of the marketing group that I was tasked with leading, I had this wonderful opportunity to work with GroupM, who I had competed with over the years, and to really just sit down and think about what is the right model to bring into a big retail organization like this. That really brings all of the right skill sets together and starts to present to our organization kind of a new way to think about media and marketing in particular. And so with Kelly's partnership, we literally got together and hand-picked capabilities that an agency wouldn't typically bring together. And not only did we handpick the talent, but we also were, we had no preconceived notions on who was in what lead roles. And so we cast the roles that that the different talent was playing in a way that I don't think would necessarily be expected. Clearest example is the person who's leading the relationship is an analytics and a technology person, not a classically trained media person. And you start there, and then everything else really starts to play out differently.
So, and Kelly, from your perspective, had you guys done something like this before? Was this novel?
No, not to this extent. I think we had gone part of the way with some clients, and I think what Kristi gave us a very motivating challenge, which was she called us in and she said, look, here's what we're doing inside Target. Here's how we're changing the way we approach marketing and communications with our guests. Here's how she told us how she was reorganizing her team to put insights at the heart of their decision making, and she needed an agency that was built to help them achieve that. So we had to break down. I'm sure many people in the audience face this in dealing with clients. It's certainly in a big group like ours. If we're honest, we were too siloed in some respects. We had multiple P&Ls and competing agendas to deal with. Kristi said, I don't want to hear about any of that, and because again, Target's needs are unique, and we don't want to be just forced into an existing agency structure. So she said, break it down for me, work with us to handpick that talent, as she said, those resources. So we took no fewer than, we took a team of about 85 people from probably 8 different companies within GroupM and created a new agency called Arrow Partners, based in Minneapolis to provide that high level of responsive service, moving at the speed of retail, but backed up by a lot of capabilities that exist in New York, San Francisco, and a couple of other markets. So it really was a first of its kind in terms of building it completely from different assets that existed in our organization, different agencies and different specialized businesses, to match up with what Kristi was trying to achieve in Target.
Yeah, it was really interesting in our conversations because you had just acquired Essence.
Yes.
At that point too, and so Kelly's like, well, what if we brought some of the guys from Essence into the mix as well? So it really was taking separate companies and blending them together into what I would consider the perfect balance of practice. And when we talk about marketing at Target, we call it math and magic, because we have one of the biggest, most beloved brands, but we also have a retail business where we've got to drive sales every day. So it's on us to really balance kind of the magic of the brand, but the math of data in terms of driving results.
And I think most of us are familiar with some of the things that Target has done with data over the years, being a really early adopter and things like being able to tell if we're pregnant before we know it ourselves, right? But can you talk about, you mentioned that the person who's leading the relationship now is actually, that's someone who's analytical on the data side. So how has that changed the relationship and the interactions?
It's changed it in a significant way. And we used to, everything that we did was started from, we've got this product or this category that we need to sell in this time frame. And then we would kind of build all the media activities through the accumulation of all of these different categories that we needed to support over a given time frame. Now we start with things, a capability that we call the green line. And the green line is a high-level analytics practice where we understand what our spend needs to be in order to hit the sales goal that we have for that time frame. So we start there, and then we start to populate it with the different products and the stories that we want to tell to key segments of our guests. So suddenly we went from categories driving our marketing activities to sales that we want to drive in the groups of our guests that are going to be most interested in the stories that we're telling. So you can kind of see how the math is leading to creating more conversations with our guests, which makes it much more personal. So, the math part doesn't have to be just about algorithms. It's just freeing us up to think about things in a way that is more guest-friendly.
And all those skill sets, I mean, you had those skill sets there, but they were, you were saying before, siloed. So has the difference really been in bringing together, being able to handpick and have this group that's dedicated now?
I think it is. I think that's sort of the manifestation of the idea that Kristi proposed to us, or the challenge that she asked us to solve. And we did start very much with a core of analytical capabilities, people who were good at taking significant amounts of data and finding the relevant insights that come out of that. And Target, obviously a very data-rich business, knows an enormous amount about their guests. Our task was to bring people who could work with Kristi's team to use that to inform communication strategies. But it wasn't just about the data piece. I mean, Kristi and Target, as she said, it's a combination of math and magic. So we had to bring to that core of analytic capabilities great creative thinkers as well. Target worked with some amazing creative partners in the agency world, and we have to be able to work very closely with them, add value to ideas, help co-create campaigns, and I think we've demonstrated that we are able to bring both the math and the magic from our perspective as well to Target's marketing.
And can you give some examples of some of those campaigns, some of what you've been able to do through this new organization?
I think, the Grammys, which is so we've done the Grammys the last couple of years, and every year we have to raise the bar on ourselves. But I'll tell you, one of the things that we were learning through our math is that the Grammys were these, for the 2 prior years, had been these beautiful moments for the artist that we were featuring in these live broadcasts that we were doing during the Grammys broadcast. But they weren't necessarily driving brand recognition for us, nor were they driving, they may have been driving CD sales for the artist, but they weren't necessarily driving store sales. So with taking this better sense of data and understanding the impact of these programs, not just on the brand, but also on the business, we took a different approach this year where we made the effort itself more about the Target store. So we took the artists, so Carly Rae Jepsen, and we pulled both of the artists into the store, did this great musical video, but because the attachment to the stores themselves was so much stronger, our brand awareness and our brand relevance, our brand recognition jumped significantly year over year. Our store sales doubled, and our online sales were 5 times higher. And so it was just we're taking kind of these franchise efforts that we have, and we were tweaking them to work harder for us because of what the data was telling us. And so we still had this wonderful, rich brand moment, still very relevant and deep into pop culture. But this time, we had far more effect on our brand and our business, in addition to the exposure that it gave to the artists.
And you didn't have to do it live.
And we didn't do it live this time.
Another bonus.
Because we figured it's hard to dance in a store and not have stuff falling off the shelves.
Definitely. So can you dig a little bit deeper, though, into the data behind this and what led you to that decision? Either one of you.
Yeah, for us in particular, it was the distinction between do these big brand moments also drive sales? It's the classic question that we all have, right? Does brand love actually convert to sales? And because we have these great analytics partners who are helping us kind of pull back the layers on that and to be able to attach the effect of brand on driving sales, we're able to understand really how to create the mechanics of the idea itself. And we have great creative partners who are also willing to engage in that conversation. And so when you have highly creative agencies that are welcoming, asking for better analytics so they understand how to actually construct a 4-minute video so that they get that kind of impact, it makes a huge difference.
I think one of the things that we appreciate in the relationship with Target as well is that Kristi and Rick Gomez, the Chief Marketing Officer, are having these conversations right with the CEO, Brian Cornell of Target. So when investment decisions are being made, they're pulled into that. Kristi relies on our team in part to help do the analytics that support budget recommendations, campaign recommendations, and proving the effect of marketing and communications on real-time sales, both online and in store. And we don't, to be honest, we don't see that at enough clients where people in Kristi's role or Rick's role are brought in almost on a daily basis to the C-suite to have those conversations and justify and prove the value of what we're collectively doing.
Yeah, and through the work that, again, our client lead is doing, not only do we understand how marketing drives sales for Target, but he's also helping us as an enterprise understand what's the impact of distribution on sales. And so if we look at what's the impact of pricing on sales? So when you consider the key levers that are in an organization that drive your business results, to have a partner who not only is understanding how media works, he understands how marketing is working, and then also how the bigger levers in our organizations are impacting our sales too. So then we can understand if something's out of whack for some reason somewhere else in the enterprise, then marketing can actually step up and play a different role if it needs to in order to guarantee that we drive the sales.
And you're starting to use your access to data, your knowledge of your customers to do other things. So can you describe what Target Guest Access is?
I sure can. So it is our entry into the publisher side of the business. We have first-party data like all retailers do. And what we do through our exchange is probably the industry term that everyone understands, is that we allow other marketers to advertise to our guests through Target Guest Access. And WMX has something like that in the marketplace. Walmart, WMX, Amazon does this, eBay does it. So it's it's a standard practice in the industry now to allow other advertisers to advertise to an attractive consumer group, which our guests are. And we sell inventory both on our owned platforms, Cartwheel, Target.com, but we also have other publisher inventory in what we call Bullseye Marketplace, so that we use off-platform media as well.
So, and do you see, I know you're talking about this as a sort of a, something that's been done before and that several companies are doing, but is there something unique about your access or understanding of your customer that would make this attractive?
Yeah, there are actually two things in particular that I focus on. The first one is the guest who shops at Target is an incredibly attractive consumer.
You're describing everyone.
Exactly, they're all here. You're all so very attractive. And in particular, it's, they tend to be a little bit more trend-setting. They're a little bit more of a thought leader, an opinion leader in terms of fashion and lifestyle, and just a real positive group of human beings. And so we find a lot of marketers find that group very attractive because they're really great consumers. So that's one key piece of it. The other piece is that we do closed loop reporting. So we actually can, because of the data that we have access to and because of the analytics and the way we've set it up, we can actually show, especially if the product is sold in our stores, we can show business results, which again, people obviously like to have that proof of performance. What is interesting in the marketplace is that we're one of the places where people can play around with understanding the impact of using first-party data versus some of the kind of industry ways of creating audiences, so that they can start to see the impact of marketing via first-party data into real human beings, as I call it, versus some of these created audiences which are not necessarily provable to be a human being or groups of human beings. And we see the results to be pretty different. So in many ways, we're a research asset for a lot of marketers to understand the differences between first-party data and other types of audiences.
And how do you make sure that what you're exposing your customers to is in line with what you would expose them to?
Yeah, we actually have some pretty good, really strong guidelines around that. It's almost the promise that we have to our guests that we would never have some, I don't know, gambling or some kind of marketer come at them that isn't necessarily in their in the genre of the types of products that they're interested in.
Okay, so it's not like YouTube, is what you're saying. So can you guys describe, talk a little bit more about the different data sources that, you mentioned third party, your own data. What's feeding into what the agency is doing? And by the way, did we actually mention that it's called Team Arrow?
Team Arrow, yes.
Team Arrow is the name of the agency that was created in partnership. Where's the data coming from, and what are they? I know you guys have access to a lot of your own data from various parts of the organization, but describe where it's all feeding from.
Well, it starts with the guest. I mean, as Kristi said, they have an incredibly rich understanding of the people who are coming to Target, shopping at Target, and that sort of grounds everything that we do. We then try to make that richer by adding third-party data, and one of the things that Kristi and the team have pushed us to do in a very positive way is to think differently about our partnerships with media companies. So Linda was just out here from NBCU. They're a good example. There are other partners as well where we've added to our relationship with those content producers and sources of audiences to offer additional data opportunities to, again, enrich Target's own understanding of guests and potential guests, bringing new people in store, bringing new people to Target.com. So it's a combination, and having, again, it comes back to people, having people who are comfortable, confident, and capable of using vast amounts of data and distilling that down into actionable insights is key for us. So we've gone from hiring mainly liberal arts graduates from colleges and universities to a much more balanced now across math, engineering, sciences, in addition to liberal arts. So people who can do complex math and speak in complete sentences is sort of the spec that we've agreed with Kristi and her team in terms of the types of people that we put into Team Arrow, and then we build around that with complementary skills, as I said, in creative, strategy, creative, execution and implementation, measurement. So it's good. I think the one other thing I would add for colleagues in the audience, and I know we're all dealing with this in different ways, and I alluded to it earlier. Kristi made it clear to us that just the traditional historical structures that we had created weren't going to help Target meet its challenges and capture those opportunities. And I think what we're seeing increasingly is that and Target have pioneered this with us, is we've got to be much more flexible and almost modular in the way we deploy our talent and the resources within our company. And you know, Target work with, as I said, great creative partners. They work with other analytics companies. They work with other data partners. And they expect us to be very capable of coming in and out of those different partnerships and making that seamless for them. So we've had to really think differently about our traditional structures and be much more flexible and client-centric. It sounds obvious, but sometimes, again, I think within our company's structures, it can be difficult. But I think that we're going to see more and more of that from marketing organizations, clients who require that kind of response and way of thinking from their agency partners.
The thing that I especially appreciate in the tenor of our relationship is that neither one of us is precious about who does what. And I think, you know, we're all having as an industry, we're having the conversation about what does the client organization do versus what does the agency do. And like, we don't get into those conversations because there's plenty to do. So we just each pick our lane in terms of where does Team Arrow take lead, where does Target take lead, and then we just get the work done. And there are absolutely times that the Team Arrow group develops things knowing that at some point they're going to toss it over the wall to us. But that's fine because then they get to move on to the next thing. And I find that relationship to just be so healthy because we're not kind of fighting over, well, that's what we do. We're all in it together, and there's a lot of give and take that makes for a really strong partnership.
It's a
And
clever...
that obviously, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's a really clever name, too. Arrow, Target.
I know.
Right,
Yeah,
bullseye.
sort of. Yeah. What were you going to say? Sorry, Todd.
No, I was
You
gonna say, I
should see
think-
the logo that he hand drew one shiny day.
No.
We used it for a while.
That's true, we did. It obviously, I mean, what Kristi's talking about obviously also makes our job a lot easier when it comes to recruiting smart people, you know, talented, creative people who want to work with a fantastic brand like Target, but you know, that sort of ethic of partnership and not being precious, as Kristi described it, about who does what, allows us to bring really great people onto the business. And it helps that, you know, anyone who works on retail knows the gratification of being able to see almost instant effect of what you do in terms of sales or online, you know, online basket purchases and how they react to the programs that we're putting in the market. But Target's approach to that has made it so much easier for us, frankly, to put a world-class team together, both in Minneapolis, where there's a great talent base, but also, as I said, in other parts of our organization as well.
And how do you make sure that, I mean, it's one thing to have the data and the tools that you can use in order to glean something from the data and make decisions, but how do you make sure that both Target and Team Arrow are aligned also in the philosophy? Because just because the data is there and the tools are there doesn't mean that you should, you know, press the button, right? So do you have conversations about that? I mean, one thing that comes to mind, which could be a point of, you know, difference, is sort of what are customers comfortable with? There's the creepiness factor. You need to make sure that you're steering clear of that. So what do those conversations look like? Are you having them between the client and the agency?
We absolutely are, and I think that that's, and most agencies are like this too. They understand the importance with which they have to handle a brand, because a brand is so precious, especially when you have a strong one. You want to keep it strong, and it's such a great asset for the company to have a strong brand. And GroupM in particular has always been at the forefront of driving some of the strongest points of view in terms of what it takes to protect a brand. And that carries right over into our relationship and as part of Team Arrow. And so they help us understand how to create those protections for the brand out in media relationships. But they also listen to us when we talk about what our agreement is between the brand and our guests. And, you know, it just makes for a real healthy relationship. But we talked about this a little bit in kind of preparation for getting together today. It's just funny to me how like-minded people keep finding their way back together again. And, you know, between the group at Team Arrow, there are a lot of key people in that relationship that I've had the opportunity to work with or compete with or get to know in different ways. And we all want the same thing for the industry, and we all know what the industry is capable of if we can just get our organizations lined up behind it. And so we're lucky that we're just at this point in time where GroupM is ready, Target is ready, and we're able to bring the right team and structure together so that we can just execute. And we're really doing interesting things at a pace that unlike anything I've seen before. And you know, it's kind of, we're at the right point in time to really start to make a difference.
You mentioned several times being able to handpick the people in the agency, which I'm sure goes a long way towards getting that alignment, right? Mm-hmm. But all these different skill sets, and I know this is happening in many, many agencies and other companies, the liberal arts majors, mm-hmm. and which are wonderful people.
Yes.
And we're all in that.
And the more analytical minds. How do you form a cohesive, you know, and this is a small-ish staff, right? Mm. How do you form a cohesive employee culture there?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that I think, you know, both Kristi and her team on the Target side and on our side we're mindful of, is ensuring that the people who come in culturally, number one, fit with what Kristi and her team are trying to accomplish within Target, but then also within our own structure. So we spend a lot of time, as I'm sure everyone in the audience does, in building their own teams, you know, on finding those people who are going to fit well and contribute in that environment. You know, we connect the team in Minneapolis back to our operations in other markets. I mentioned New York and San Francisco are the ones where we have the most resources who support that team in Minneapolis. So they have access to best practices that are happening in our broader organization. They have access to those resources and data sources and other assets that exist within GroupM, so that they're learning constantly, not only in the work that they're doing for Target, but on our side in the agency business as well. But it's really co-creation, and I mean, you know, Kristi created this model with us. It's not like she just gave us the challenge and we came back and solved the problem. You know, we worked through it together. Decided these are the skill sets we need. These are the types of people culturally who succeed with Target and Target's other partners. Mm-hmm. And then we went out and worked against that brief. Mm-hmm. But it's critical. And I think, you know, when you have a smaller agency or a smaller team and it's focused around one client, you do have to give people other outlets for learning, for motivation, for inspiration. And we've got to keep them connected to the other parts of our organization while keeping them focused on Target.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point too. It's left brain and right brain, and how do you even speak the same language? And to me, one of the more interesting things about leading teams of people is bringing together kind of this cocktail of talent and personalities where you kind of stretch each other. And as long as people come in with the right amount of humility, I think both sides learn from each other in ways that they wouldn't get to if they just continued to surround themselves with people with the exact same skill set.
Yeah. And real quick, last question for you guys. Anything you can say about what's next? What is Team Arrow currently working on? What can we expect next year's Grammys?
I'm not sure I can let that out.
Any new ways that you're looking at working together? Things that you're experimenting with?
Yeah, from my perspective, we got to crack TV. And there is so much movement in the marketplace right now in terms of being able to apply first-party data to either how you value television, but also addressability. And I think that this will be the year where we really get to crack it and start to put all of the discipline that we have into such an important medium, video, TV, video, kind of the whole spectrum.
Yep, in all its platforms. I think that's probably the biggest focus and challenge that the team are working on currently, for sure.
All right, great. Well, I want to thank Kristi and Kelly for being with us today. Thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you.